everyone, and it's my distinct pleasure to carry on our conversation concerning Ender You're Strong. It's about to go down in Atlanta, Georgia, December the 14th to the 16th. And I want to make sure that you guys have registered. And if you haven't registered, as usual, I'm going to ask you, what rock have you been living under? This year is going to be epic. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Laterras Whitfield. I'm sure people pronounce his name and has all kinds of pronunciation, but Laterras is the right one, Laterras Whitfield. He's a multi-talented individual. He wears many hats and he has made significant impact in various fields. He's the host of Dear Future Wifey Life Podcast. He's a three-time regional Emmy nominated filmmaker. He's a national playwright. He's a director. He's a passionate advocate for foster and adoption causes. And it's just exciting that I get a chance to just unpack who this amazing gift is and to explore his remarkable journey, his insights, and the life of Laterras Whitfield. But before we do, please watch this. Into some serious topics. I'd love for our audience to get to know you. You have a diverse range of talents, gifts, interests. I would call you a polymath.
Thank
And
you.
you have a journey, obviously. Could you share with our audience a bit about your personal journey and what led you to pursue the various roles in podcasting, filmmaking, and advocacy?
That's a lot. So well, we'll start with Dear Future Wifey. What allowed me to launch Dear Future Wifey was I wanted to heal openly. I fumbled my ex-wife's heart, and I said, God, I want you to heal the brokenness in me, so that when I do marriage again, I can make sure that I enter into that thing properly and cover my future wifey's heart properly by me becoming a new individual. And so that's what led to Dear Future Wifey. Now, as far as the advocacy work with foster care and adoption, my nephew was put in the foster care system. My sister was dealing with a drug addiction, and I decided to adopt him. I said, you know, as long as I got breath in my body and blood in my body, that I could actually step up and parent a child that didn't come from my loins. So I said, let's go ahead and adopt him. I started off actually fostering him, and then it ended up leading to adoption because neither my sister or his father wanted to step up to the plate and be the parent. So I felt like God thrust me in this position. And then I met this young man named Armani, and the day I met him while I was doing some stuff with the local news channel here, God told me to adopt him. He was 16 years old, and so he's 20 now. I adopted Ladarian when he was 7, and he's 15 now. And it's so great that, you know, this month is National Adoption Awareness Month. So I don't think it's just by happenstance that you and I are having this conversation.
What was it like to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and then having to deal with the day-to-day parenting, the day-to-day challenges of parenting?
It's a little more challenging because of the fact, like, I have a daughter who's 28 years old, and so I had the experience of parenting her. But when it came to these young boys that were full of trauma and abandonment, it was a huge challenge because you're dealing with the feelings that to have them, can't even say they had to overcome, but feeling like they weren't good enough for their parents to step up and do the right thing. But I've always told them, like, your parents are dealing with addictions, and you got to give grace. And I always try to teach them what the Bible says, which is honor your mother and father in the Lord, for your days will be long. So don't build up animosity where you're like, I hate my mom. And I'm still dealing with Armani about that. He's like, I don't have nothing to say about my mom or my dad and all this. I'm like, man, listen, just give them grace, because without them, you wouldn't be here. But it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot dealing with them, and it teaches me a lot about myself. It teaches me about the grace that I desire from God is the same grace that I extend to them.
You're using media as a platform. That makes you a great storyteller. How is media actually shaping the mindset of the next generation?
When I say media probably has the greatest influence on not even the next generation, but even my generation, because look at us. We're using media to communicate. We're using media to stream this wherever this is going to go. We're using the power of media. And so people have a tendency to want information right now. With the new generation, they don't have even I talk to my son, I call him my nephew son, Ladarian. He says, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a YouTuber. It's like their goals are set on being YouTubers, not, hey, I want to play football. I want to be a police officer, a fireman. I remember when I was young, I want to be a fireman. Well, they see the power of social media. So they say, I want to be a YouTuber, and it's shaping them. And if it's not used properly, it can definitely be not only our downfall, but even the next generation's downfall, because we see how it influences us in relationships. If you have a problem with your significant other, you can just go on Instagram and find a new girlfriend in 24 hours. You know what I'm saying? Find a new husband in 24 hours, or find a new date that you set up an hour later. And so it teaches us, I feel like the greatest detriment is that it doesn't allow us to cultivate patience. And so we're just not patient anymore. We want everything right now. I remember, you could probably go back and remember when the internet, when we had AOL dial-up, and it take forever to get and you click on something, you wait a little bit, and then you click on something else, you wait a little bit. Now it's like, if it goes a little bit of slow, even a little glitch, even when we were doing this, a little glitch, we like, something's going on. You know what I'm saying? But it used to be where we would never be able to have this communication streaming like this. And so I believe that it has cultivated a lack of patience.
Teaching patience is going to be an important skill. I mean, those are the soft skills that are going to be required in the So you
Absolutely.
have this amazing creative journey. And I know that Texas is known for its arts and its cultural scene. Do you have a favorite local artist or theater or a spot in the city that inspires you? And would
Yeah. My first national play was done at the Black Academy of Arts and Letters, run by Curtis King, founder. I love his story of how he was a guy, grew up in the country, and just had the vision and passion for the arts. And so he went before the city and petitioned them to carve out a little part of the convention center and allow it to be the Black Academy of Arts and Letters. And so I did my first play there. Before I began to be a national playwright, I volunteered backstage. So all the big shows that would come to town, I would go back and serve. It was something that God taught me in that shepherd boy stage of servitude, getting the tea for the actors or whatnot. And then I began to look at the wardrobe cases with the names of the promoters etched on it. And I said, I'm going to have one of my plays on national tour. And so I took one of those numbers and that address, and I began to solicit that promoter with one of my first national plays. And I say one of my first plays at that time that later became a national play, because he took me seriously and launched my career at the age of 24.
So, you have your physical tour and you're going from place to place, but you're making such a great impact on your podcast. And to me, it's the art of storytelling. Right. Storytelling is about connecting with the hearts first and then with the head second. So if you had one conversation that you had to have with the world and you couldn't leave that topic, what would be the topic and what would be the conversations that you would have?
If we had one conversation would be about
Mm,
grace. I believe that grace could take us a long way. Having grace in relationships, having grace in our parenting, having grace on our jobs. If we can extend and receive grace on the right level, I
mm,
believe the
mm,
world could be a
mm.
better place.
Uh,
Because when I talk to people about marriages and divorces ending or whatnot, it's because grace ran out. It was like, I can no longer deal with that, whatever that was. And we all have our own threshold, but it was all about that moment that made us decide to just throw in the towel, and I can speak transparently about that because it was a stage in my marriage where I was like, yeah, I think there's better out there. No, I don't want to, I can't do another year with this. And so I always think about, what if God did that with me? What if God said, Laterras, you done did a little bit too much. I'm through with you. You know what I'm saying? And so I find it very enthralling when you hear the scripture that God is married to the backslider. So it's saying that no matter how far we leave away from God, he's still connected and married to us. And so I say that if we had more conversations around grace, extending grace, we'll be able to go through the different seasons with one another, whether it's parenting, whether it's love relationships, or even with our employers and employees, that be able to touch people as
mhm.
human
You talk
beings and
about the
extend grace.
moment when grace runs out. For women, a lot of women are going through a lot in their relationships, from abuse, from gaslighting, you name it. Um, when is enough for a woman?
I think enough is enough when you say that. When you can say enough is enough, because there's also wisdom in it. I would never advocate for a woman to stay in an abusive relationship. That's when enough is enough. When you feel like your life has been threatened, when you feel like your emotional stability has been threatened, because some people may never put a hand on you physically, but they've done so much mental damage to you where people look at you like, you are not the same
Mhm.
person. You're a shell of yourself. That's because you began to be so broken by this narcissistic abuse that you can't even show up. You don't even know if the sky is the sky anymore. And that's what gaslighting is somebody making you believe something that's not real. And so some people can augment your reality where you're looking around and be like, you're crying more than you're smiling. At that point, that's enough. And so I want to make sure that I make a distinct difference between giving someone's grace and then
Yeah,
being a fool.
yeah,
God has given us wisdom. At the end of the day, you say, you know what, I can love you from afar, but I got to go. I can't stick in this situation where you're emotionally and mentally abusing me. God never wanted us to be or to succumb
yeah.
to those type of situations.
So this is going to go deep into your psyche, helping women. How can you tell if a man truly loves you and a man that is using you?
By his act of sacrifice. You can't love without sacrifice. The Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave. If you're dealing with someone that's taking and taking and taking, he don't love you. He's a user. But if you find that he's giving, when he finds out that you find when you're talking to him and you say, hey, listen, I need you to do this. And he's not, well, listen, this is who I am. I ain't finna do nothing. This is the way I was before you met me and I'm gonna be like this. He's not a person of sacrifice. He's not even willing to adjust what you need. He's not willing to do anything of sacrifice to change, to pivot any part of his way of doing things for the betterment of you. At that point,
Mhm.
you're with the wrong
So
person.
I need your perspective on this, trauma and men who are 30, 40, 50, 60, who keeps referring to the little boy in me. Address that.
To
Yeah.
the little boy in himself. Most guys don't even know about the little boy in themselves, but that little boy throw temper tantrums anytime he's pushed into a corner. I believe, especially in the African American culture, we need therapy. It goes back all the way back to slavery, all the way back to our parents who said what goes on in this house stays in this house. It taught us to be silent about some of the things that happened to us that we didn't have a voice for. And so I believe that, yes, that little boy inside of all of us needs healing, because that little boy is operating. The Bible says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, but when I became an adult, I put childish things behind. So at some point, you're seeing people act out as that little boy and not showing up holistically as the man that God called them to be. And it's okay. I talk to a lot of brothers, DM me all the time after watching me be so transparent on my podcast. And I've given safe spaces for men to show up by me leading with my own scars. And so what I would say to that brother that feels like he's misunderstood, that feels like no one cares about him, is that, hey, we've all been there before. Find you a brother that you can link arms with. Find you a therapist that'll begin to tell you the truth, and don't get off your spot. If they're teaching you and showing you stuff, the first thing that we have a tendency to do is hide. That's what happened in the Bible. Adam hid when he was faced with his own faults. But stand 10 toes down, face the ugliness of who you are, and deal with it so you can heal from it.
How do we heal? That's an individual. How do we heal our community?
By one person healing at a time. If we keep infusing healing, if I operate from a heal space and then I teach my boys, hey, listen, I remember my boy one of my sons was going through a deep little heartbreak. His little first love was playing with his heart and broke his heart. And he got real angry, and he came in my room. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, I want to talk about it. I said, let's talk about it. He had his fist clenched up like this. He was so mad. And I was like, I went to him and I grabbed his hand and I rubbed his hand. I said, release it, release it. He was just balled up. I said, release it, let your hands go. And he let his hands loosen up, and tears streamed down his face. And he wanted to wipe it and stop it. I said, let it flow, son. I said, I know what it feels like to be hurt. And I began to share with him my own heartbreak with a woman. And I hugged him and we held each other, and I just let him cry on my shoulder. Well, just think about it. If I was a toxic individual, I'd be like, what, you crying over some girl? Man, that ain't mean nothing. Man, you 17 years old, you crying over, that ain't even no real love. What you talk? Then I minimize his pain. What happens with that standpoint, he says, I'll never let anybody see me cry because they'll think I'm weak. And then now I teach him toxic masculinity instead of teaching them, hey, it's okay to cry. It's okay to love. And when he said something to me, he said, I'm never going to love anybody else again. I said, don't do that. Don't give her the best part of you.
That is really good.
Don't give her the best part of you.
Strong is a special event for me because it's all about empowerment. It's all about growth. It's all about giving people tools. And a lot of people have been through so much adversity. Can you share a pivotal moment or lesson from your life that has guided you towards achieving your goals, your dreams, especially in face of adversity or in the face of adversity?
Sometimes when asked a question like this, it makes people want to go towards something that's more economic or something that's more financial goals. But I always lead from a heart space. It was, as I talked about at the beginning of this conversation, going through a failed marriage. Going through a failed marriage, taking vows with somebody, saying that you're going to spend forever with them, and then dealing with the pain of not showing up authentically or showing up as my best self was the greatest lesson for me, to say, hey, listen, this woman took vows with you. She expected for you to be faithful. You weren't faithful. You decided to self-medicate with other women instead of showing up. You understood who God was, but you didn't lean into God in your worst moments, in those broken moments. And so going through that marriage of 10 years taught me a whole lot about who I was, and it made me deal with the ugliness of who I was, and made me say, you know what, it's time to really heal so that I can be a better person, because I didn't like who I was when I was married, didn't like who I became. And so that was a pivotal point, which made me birth the Dear Future Wifey podcast, so that I can use the pain of my past to become a platform to heal people.
One of the things that Viktor Frankl says, adversity introduces a man to himself. And how true that is. Yeah. So, social media, digital platforms, you're a creative. So, how would you advise individuals that feel like, okay, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be an influencer, and these are usually creative peoples. How do you see the responsibility of media and professionals and creatives and influencers? How do you see this as an opportunity for them to promote positive messaging and drive social change?
When I say I love that question, Sister Trimm, like picking on you. What I love that question, Sister Trimm. Listen, that's the biggest thing right there is using the platform for positive change, and to understand that that's the vehicle that God can give us to be utilized in such a dramatic way. Tapping into your purpose. Once you know what your purpose is, everything else flows from it. Like you said, you started End Your Year Strong because it came from a place of purpose in you. The title of this is called Resurgence. That's a powerful word. I ain't gonna even go into why you named it that, but that's a powerful word. To understand what the platform like you're using the influence that you have, the platform that you created to help ignite a fire in anybody that walks across that stage, speaking, as well as the people that's in that audience receiving this. Everybody's going to have a huge takeaway from this experience to go into 2024 with a whole nother level. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what's so beautiful. You're the epitome of utilizing your platform for that. The encouragement is to watch other people that you admire steward their gift well. That's first off. Everybody needs some level of mentorship where you look and go, what are they doing? What do I like about what they're doing? Not trying to copycat them, but look at them and say, I love how they're stewarding their gift well. And then learn from them. Say, I like how they did this with me. I'm gonna tweak this a little bit. And then tap into your purpose. Is God calling you to do whatever that thing is? And you'll always know it because that thing that God is calling you to do will always be something that you will actually do for free. And it's just a bonus that you're getting paid for, but it flows out of your soul where you say, I'll do it for free because I enjoy it so much. That's when you've tapped into your purpose. And so you use the vehicle of social media to steward that gift well, to bring you before thousands, 10,000s, and don't get caught up in the spirit of comparison, because that can happen very quickly. You'd be like, well, Cindy Trimm has this, but I only have, 50 people on my Zoom call. I don't have a big conference, but I just do Zoom calls every month and I only got 50 people on there every day. Well, at the end of the day, steward those 50 people well. Don't try to compare yourself to these mega speakers and mega preachers and all these people that have bigger platforms. God may use you to steward that 50, or steward that 10, or steward that 25 people the way he would. And that's when he can bless you with that King David anointing, because King David became king because he knew how to shepherd those sheep well. And so I'm trying not to preach right now. And so the reality is, once you learn how to steward what it is well, then God creates the influence. God creates the influence and the elevation. And so being stewarding that situation, that's why I said with me, I never knew I'd have a platform for 452,000 subscribers on YouTube. I couldn't even fathom that. I just steward that 200 well. I just said, I got these 200 people. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to show up with them every week and be who I am. And then it went to 1,000, and then it went to 20,000, and it just kept on growing. But it's the same. Everybody who started watching my podcast at the very beginning 3 years ago, they say that's the same old Laterras. He's going to always be real. He's going to always be transparent. He's going to always be vulnerable. He's going to break down and cry in an episode or two. He's just going to always be himself. I'm never going to allow the platform to change who I am. And another thing, I said, I'll never become a slave to my own success. And a slave to your own success where you can't take breaks. You feel like you got to keep chasing the next level. I said, listen, the levels I've already achieved, I didn't even believe I could accomplish. So I'm not chasing anything right now. I'm just chasing the feet of God. And so in the moments where I get overwhelmed, I lay on my face before God and say, God, restore me. That's why, yeah, people are going to come to this conference looking for what we do with Dear Future Wifey and all that type of stuff. But I'm coming to get poured into, to be straight up honest. I'm coming to get refilled.
The most
That's what I'm looking for.
powerful educators are first students. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, first students. You mentioned David, and I think, for me, the Bible is my life book. down, period.
Yeah.
If you could choose one of your favorite characters in the Bible, who would that be? And if you had an opportunity to have a face to face with them, what would you talk about?
It would definitely be Jesus. At first I was thinking about Moses or David or whatnot, but it would have to be Jesus. Ain't nobody outdoing him. And so the conversation that I would have with him is to literally ask him, why was I created? What was the purpose? Am I fulfilling what you call me to do? Because nothing else matters at that point. Am I serving the purpose that you saw for my life? That's the kind of conversation I would have. And ask him what was so unique about me that you went through all that pain for, regardless of all the mistakes that I've made, the crazy decisions I made, you still call me worthy. Why am I so worthy of the blood that you shed?
Wow. Old Testament.
Old Testament, I gotta go holler at my boy Moses. Because Moses, one thing I used to say, I said, man, God gave him a bad deck of cards. Just because he smited the rock, he couldn't even get into the promised land. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do all this work, you go run around the wilderness like that. I was like, man, how you feel? How you feel? Like, do you feel like God was not good to you because you did all this work and didn't even get to go realize the dream that you had of walking through the promised land? We got to have a conversation about that.
And I mean, Moses, wow, he wasn't even thinking about becoming an individual that literally would change the world. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I was talking to another one of the speakers, and she just mentioned this phrase, born to change the world. And it changed my life because I heard God say, Cindy, your assignment in 2024 is to empower individuals who have been born to change the world. I believe, you're such a great storyteller. And we connect at the level of stories, and you're telling the truth about yourself. You're telling stories about your life, your narrative. If you were, and here it is, stranded on an island with someone who literally changed the world, who would that be? And what would you talk about if you were stranded for 2 days? Who would?
If I was stranded for 2 days, you're talking about a physical person?
Yeah.
Here.
Who would that person be that you would love to be stranded with? And what would you talk about?
You be asking some questions. Who would I be? Who would it be?
Let's make it easier. Let's make it easier for you. In the movie space. Yeah, in the movie space.
In the movie space, it'll probably be like a hold on. My phone's about to die. In the movie space, it'll probably be old Denzel. Yeah.
Tell me why. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Well, while we're waiting for him to be connected, you have heard it from the mouth of Laterras. We're so excited to have him for many, many reasons. We have our special guests, which we're going to be focusing on women, but we also have our special guests that will be focusing on men. So those of you that have husbands or even your special love interest, we want you to get them registered because this is going to be fire. When you have someone that is able to tell the truth, someone that is able to show up, someone that is able to inspire you to become the best version of yourself, not only for yourself, but for your significant others, for your family, you have someone that is worth listening to. This is Resurgence. I'm Cindy Trimm, inviting you to End Your Year Strong. Our theme this year is Resurgence. We want you to register now. Make sure that you get your hotel. It's endyouryearstrong.com. Stay tuned.